China's trusted relations with Russia is not a liability. Actually, it's an asset in the international efforts to solve the crisis in a peaceful way.
Why can't you condemn this as an invasion?
Well, don't be naive. Condemnation.
It sounds naive to say that's not an invasion.
It doesn't solve the problem.
China's ambassador to the United States scoffing at calls to condemn Russia's war on Ukraine. And our next guest has long warned about China's threat to our country.
So who is the next guest? Well, it's Fox News contributor and former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Newt, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the ambassador just said condemning Russia won't work. How would they know they haven't tried?
Well, first of all, they are Russia's ally. Both Xi Jinping, the head of the Communist Party in China, and Putin have pledged that they're going to be close friends and allies, period. So there's, China sees a great deal of its future as part of sort of the dictators against the free world. And I think that it's very unlikely that they're going to break with Putin over something as small as invading Ukraine. After all, they're looking at possibly someday invading Taiwan. So I don't think they see themselves as wanting to set a precedent that what Russia's doing is bad. I don't think anybody in the West should rely on a communist dictatorship to be an ally in maintaining the rule of law.
Good point.
Mr. Speaker, we saw President Biden, the video of him riding his bicycle. He spent the weekend, another weekend, at his home in Delaware. He's heading to Poland and to Brussels to meet with NATO leaders, to meet with EU leaders. And then he was being asked by one of the diplomatic advisors in Ukraine. She invited Biden to come over to Kyiv, and she said, one should not be afraid if you are brave. But Jen Psaki tweeted, there are no plans to travel to Ukraine. What is your reaction? And what can he say on this trip to ensure our allies that they have confidence in the United States and Joe Biden?
Well, let me say, first of all, I don't mind presidents taking some time off. It's the toughest job in the world. And what worries me about Biden is what he does when he's working, not what he does when he's bicycling. Let me just make a couple of really quick points. One, we ought to adopt a policy of giving the Ukrainians cruise missiles and surface-to-surface missiles, and we should say that any Russian airfield which is bombing civilians, any missile depot which is supplying missiles to bomb civilians is fair game, and the Ukrainians ought to start hitting Russia. This idea that Russia gets to invade Ukraine, Russia gets to destroy Ukraine, Russia's not held at, everybody's timid and terrified of Putin. Well, nonsense. I mean, there's a point where you got to say, when you cross a certain line, and by the way, the number one thing that Biden should focus on when he's in Brussels is an open public declaration of the scale of military reaction that will occur if Putin uses either a chemical or a nuclear weapon. This is a line nobody believes Biden if he says there'll be strong sanctions, whatever that means. But if we were to say using chemical weapons or using nuclear weapons will trigger the following response within hours, then all of a sudden the Russians would understand that's a line they couldn't afford to cross because the cost would be so horrendous. But there's a real danger. If you watch what he's doing in Mariupol and elsewhere, there's a real danger that out of frustration that he will use the same kind of chemical weapons that he used in Syria. We can't tolerate that. Right. But not tolerating it means you've got to move and do something. One last point. All the aid we're sending them is 1/44th of the equipment we left behind in Afghanistan.
Oh, man.
Think about that.
Yeah.
We gave the Afghans $85 billion. Biden wants us to feel good that we're sending about $2 billion to a country fighting for its life. And lastly, if you get a chance, Peter or somebody should ask the White House, are the missiles, the high altitude anti-aircraft missiles in Ukraine? The president talked about it last week.
Yeah.
Victor Kripchak said very, I think, intelligently in the Wall Street Journal that time is life. And I think we need to realize Ukrainians are dying every hour while Americans are holding press conferences.
Yeah, and the Secretary of Defense had no answer to that. And he looked like he wasn't hiding the answer. He had no answer yesterday. Are these missiles getting in? We know Bulgaria has them. We know France has great systems. We just got to get them in. I don't want to hear about any more money. What is in their hands? And last thing, just real quick, you're a military historian. Has anyone played out what happens if Russia wins this? Then what?
I'm certain what happens. Every dictator in the world decides they can get away with something. The world becomes dramatically more dangerous, and Putin will then start pressuring Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania. I mean, he's not going to stop.
Yeah.
He wants to recreate the Soviet Empire.
So we have to make sure he doesn't.
If we teach him that it's okay,
right,
we increase the risk at Taiwan enormously if Putin gets away with this.
That should be the message. He can't win. Thanks, Newt. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.